Hello and welcome to this episode of the BariAftercare podcast titled, are you ready? Facing the Music Together, Identifying Our Personal Thinking Traps. So tonight I'm following through with what we talked about last week, all that negative thinking, all those cognitive distortions, the cognitive behavioral therapy ways to work through the stinking thinking. And I'm going to pick up with some more specific information today because this is such an important topic. We sabotage ourselves in every single area of our lives so much through our negative thinking. And we may not have any clue about how negative our thinking actually is. Last episode, I shared with you some amazing statistics, and I don't have them in front of me right now, but I remember that the gist of the message was we repeat thoughts day after day after day after day. And if we're honest, I think we can say, yeah, I think a lot about my health, or I think a lot about the number on that scale, or I think a lot about how I'm angry with my friend or my partner or my parent or whoever it is, my boss. I'm worried about my kid and this issue or that issue. So I think that it's not far fetched for us to think about how often we have the repeated same number of thoughts. And what the other part of that research is that the vast majority of those repeated thoughts are negative. So, unbeknownst to us, probably, is that we are filling our heads and we are on like a hamster wheel of negative thinking. And all of that negative thinking really takes a toll on us. I just had a thought pop into my head, and I'm going to share it with you. My shed. It's like I have this shed in my head, Dr. Seuss. I went to Israel about a year and a half ago and did some sightseeing and some touring, and also did some work over there at a cultural center. And it was an amazing, amazing experience. But the young woman who is in charge of the cultural center is here visiting this week. And I had the opportunity to spend some time with her on Sunday, and I'm going to spend much of the afternoon with her again tomorrow. And so we were, the group of us who all went on this trip were gathered together and we were talking. This was her first time in the United States. Now, think about this woman. She is from Jericho, which is part of the West Bank, and she's never really been too far away from there. She did have an opportunity to go to Switzerland one time, and she'd never been in the United States. So of course we were curious about what she thinks, and she was just so amazed at all of the space that we have and how gorgeous everything is and how new and how clean and how just amazed. And I said, "Yep." And we have a whole lot of people who do nothing but complain. And her comment was, "I think they need to stop that." And it ties in perfectly with this podcast episode because I think we need to stop that. And many of you are probably thinking, well, it's easier said than done. Well, of course, it's easier said than done. Almost everything we're doing is easier said than done, but we are capable and we have the ability and we have the desire, I hope, at least I have the desire to work toward making my life the best it can be, not just with my health and my weight, but in every area of my life. And these negative thoughts pervade all the areas of our life. So we're going to get clean with each other today. We're going to face the music together and we're going to look at some of these personal thinking traps, also known as cognitive distortions. You may have heard of some of these before. I teach a little bit about these in the Gain While You Lose class, but it could be a week's worth of class. So we're going to talk about these cognitive distortions or thinking traps. And those two words, thinking traps, are a clue as to how these things affect us. They're traps. we get stuck. It's hard to imagine yourself stuck in a trap and you can't pull the bars apart and you can't wedge it open. You're stuck there. And that's what happens to us when we engage in this repetitive negative thinking. So, we're going to talk about what are they, how do they affect our weight loss adventure, and other areas of our lives. Because my take on BariAftercare is that we go beyond bariatrics. Of course, we want to focus on your health and your weight and keeping you on track with the gotta do'ems. But we want to go beyond bariatrics because all of the things that we apply, the tools that we use to make your BariAftercare journey better, will also improve your life in other ways. So then we're going to talk about specifics. What are some specific examples of these cognitive distortions? And I've chosen ones that I think we can all relate to pretty much. There are so many of them. I was looking at this and researching, and I'm like, my gosh, I've never heard of half of these, and I'm a psychologist. Finally, we're going to talk about how do I let go of these negative thought patterns? I gave you some worksheets last week. I gave you some links in the show notes, suggested that you do a Google search for cognitive behavior worksheets. And I hope that you are engaging in those quite actively, because the only way to do this is to literally practice it. Look at scenarios throughout your day, come to grips with, what's the situation in which, my negative thinking got the best of me, and how could I have challenged that thinking using the tools that we talked about last week. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about these cognitive distortions and these thinking traps, keeping that visual image in your mind of however you imagine a trap would be, because the negative thoughts are going to keep you stuck. And we want to continue to move forward in our lives. So, we talked about negative thinking patterns last week, gave you the statistics, and then we discussed this idea of the automatic negative thoughts. And another visual is to imagine ants crawling all through your brain. And these are the automatic negative thoughts, the ANTs. And we want to extinguish those because they block our path forward. We want to move, we want to change those. And we talked about some of those cognitive behavior skills. And we're going to go back to those as we end today's session. So, what are cognitive distortions, and how do they negatively affect your weight loss adventure, and how do they affect other areas of your life overall? And I had a client tell me something today, and I posted it. If you're part of the BariAftercare group online, I posted it in there because I think it is absolutely brilliant. And I can't believe I never heard this before. But her thought, and I'm reading it off my piece of paper here, was: irrational thoughts lead to irrational behavior. Well, hello, Einstein. Negative thoughts lead to negative behavior. Irrational thoughts lead to irrational behaviors. So, these cognitive behavioral skills are to help us balance the emotion and the logic, because our highly charged emotional thoughts are often very irrational. Nobody loves me. Nobody cares. I'll never make this work. I can never keep my weight off. Very irrational. So, when we try to balance, like that teeter totter we talked about last time, we try to balance those irrational thoughts that are holding us down with negative emotions with some solid logic, using the questions in those handouts that we used. So we have these negative or irrational patterns of thought. Negative or irrational thoughts are going to lead to negative or irrational behaviors. I think we should all tattoo that on our arms. We should have that as our screensaver, make a banner in your house. I don't know, because it's so wise. So these cognitive distortions are just what they say. They're distorted. They're irrational. They're not logical. They don't fit together. These thought patterns, they can negatively impact how we perceive ourselves. Think about some of your negative self-talk. I'm such an idiot. I don't know why they let me into school. I'll never finish this program. I'm just not smart enough. Da 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 da. Those are negative thoughts. These are negative thought patterns. They're affecting how we feel about ourselves. They affect how we feel about others. They affect the world around us. When we're feeling yucky, we're going to not be our best selves with the people closest in our lives. You know that is true. So, like the title of today's top podcast, Face the Music Together. Let's get real about this. If I'm negative and grouchy and grumpy, you can bet I'm not the best with my husband, my kids, my poor puppy, all the people closest to me. Oh, we can put on our happy face and treat others outside the home nicely if we choose to, but we could do that if we chose to in our own homes too. All right. So, these negative thought patterns disrupt our lives. They lead to negative emotions and negative behaviors. So, where do they come from? Well, we're not going to repeat a lot of the podcasts that I've done in the past, but a lot of them come from things we've been told to ourselves, messages that we've been given by adults in our lives during our childhoods. Kids at school who called you names, or your experiences. I didn't make the middle school volleyball team, and only 2 kids didn't make the team. So, I have this little like, why the heck could you just let us be on the team and go to the practices? But that negatively affected me because my self-confidence plummeted, and I thought I'm no good at sports. I what I never tried out for another sport again in my life. Now, it doesn't affect everybody that way, but this happened to affect me that way. And that was a message I was given by an adult who said, 2 of you who tried out are not good enough to sit on the bench. That's a cognitive distortion in my mind because that's not what he was saying. It's just maybe they only had enough uniforms for that many people. Maybe the school only funded so many students. I didn't know any of that, if that's the truth, but that's how I took that message and internalized it. So, any kind of messages, whether it's a statement or an action by an adult or a peer, maybe it's messages through social media. Whew, that's a problem today. This is how you're supposed to look, this is what you're supposed to wear, these are the ways you're supposed to talk, these are the sayings you're supposed to have, all of those things. Any kind of traumatic experiences, all of these things may play a role, not to mention your biology. You may be a redhead and everybody thinks that's, something to make fun of a child over. Weight certainly is, or maybe being a lefty was something of a left-handed person was something of embarrassment for you. So these negative thought patterns get in early. The earlier they get in and the more often they're repeated, the deeper they cut and the more we replay those. So remember those negative thoughts we replay over and over and over again? A lot of them stem from there. But at this point in our lives as adults, we're the one that pushes play on the tape. We're the one who can say, I'm stopping that tape. I'm going to shut it down for good by refusing, once I'm aware of it, to get on that hamster wheel with it. I'm not going to do it. But it leads to unhappiness. And here's what research tells us. So don't miss this. This negative thinking, these negative thought patterns are obstacles to self change. What are we trying to do with our lives in this program, at least? We're trying to lose weight and keep that weight off. That is self change. Negative thinking is an obstacle, it gets in the way because it's a trap. So, when you're thinking in these negative patterns, the idea that you can change or you will change or it's possible to change or there's hope to believe there's change feels overwhelming. It feels out of range. It feels out of your league. It's tough to see the small steps that may move you forward. And with this negative thought cycle running through you, you might not feel like you have the energy. That's why you feel stuck. That's why they call these traps. The other problem with these cognitive distortions, these unhealthy thinking patterns, these thinking traps, is that any kind of mental health stuff you've got going on, anxiety, depression, PTSD. These traps can make these things seem worse. So maybe you have this self-doubt and now you're having these thoughts about why you're no good at sports, or why it's been tough for you to keep your weight off, or why nobody understands you, or why your family's always picking on you, or whatever it happens to be. And then it's made worse because you're already feeling anxious or distressed or distraught. So it makes it bigger, which decreases your motivation. We need to maintain our motivation when we're in this maintaining weight loss process, because we've got to continue to do the gotta do's for as long as we live. And when you lose motivation, sometimes it's harder to get it back. And your motivation gets zapped by a lot of things throughout the day. But these negative thought patterns can practically extinguish your motivation. So we don't want to do that. Not only can these negative thought patterns decrease your motivation, it lowers your self esteem. Who needs that? Aren't we all, let's get real together, suffering from that to some degree? Maybe it's gotten better over the years. Maybe it stayed the same, or God forbid, it's gotten worse. But again, if you're having a depressed mood, these negative thoughts bring you down even further. And it makes the idea of alleviating temporarily the depression or the anxiety or the worry or the fear or the low self-talk more alluring to things like, give me a joint, give me a shot of whiskey, give me a credit card and I'll go spend it to the limit, give me a whole chocolate cake, give me something to get that dopamine in my head so I feel a little better, at least temporarily. These negative thought patterns can also keep us from engaging. And what we need in the world, what we need as human beings more than anything, is genuine connection to other human beings. And it can lead to self-harming behavior. Self-harming behavior, my friends, includes things like overeating junk food, not exercising. We think self-harming behavior and we think cutting with a razor blade. Yes, that's self-harming, but so is excessive eating of unhealthy foods. So is not giving our body the kind of movement that it needs. All right, here we go. We are going to talk about some of the most specific cognitive distortions. And I want you to get really, really, really real. And I'm going to get really, really, really real with you too. And I'm going to share with you some of the ways that I have engaged in some of these thought traps. And I want you, maybe you're sitting somewhere listening to this or in your car. If you're by yourself, sitting somewhere safe, you're not driving, maybe make a note or voicemail yourself a little text. These things apply to us, my friends, and you are not exempt. Maybe not all of these, but plenty of them. So if we don't get real with these things, it's going to be even more difficult to change them than it already is. So believe it or not, I found an article in Psychology Today that identified and delineated over 50 specific cognitive distortions that are fairly common. Now, I'm not going to go over all 50 of those. That would be a way too long podcast. And some of them I kind of linked together. So let's get going on this. The first one, and these were in no specific order, but I chose this one first because I think it's one that we all can cop to participating in or engaging in, which is all or nothing thinking. You may have heard this referred to as black or white thinking or polarized thinking. I also kind of included perfectionistic thinking. Perfectionistic and all or nothing are not exactly the same, but they're close enough, because all or nothing thinking is like, if I don't reach my goal weight, I have failed. That is irrational. That's an irrational thought. A rational thought would be, I haven't reached my goal weight, but my goodness, I have succeeded in losing more weight than I've ever lost before. I feel so much better. I've gotten off a lot of medications. I'm able to do so much more. So we can choose to be the negative Nelly, or have that automatic negative thought come in and pervade our mind. It's illogical, it's irrational, and it's going to lead to irrational behavior. Because if I think, oh my gosh, I've lost 130 pounds, but it's not my goal weight, so I have failed, I'm probably going to engage in some irrational, unhealthy eating. That is not what we want to do. So we want to change that. We want to change it to, you know what? I'm going to catch that thinking. I'm going to call it what it is, and then I'm going to change it. So I'm going to catch it. That was a negative thought. I'm going to call it what it is. That's pretty black and white thinking there, Connie. And I'm going to say, you know what? It's not even true because I've lost an incredible amount of weight, leaving me feeling wonderful. And you know how I feel about a goal weight. Or this perfectionistic thinking. If I miss a day of working out, I'm going to quit. I have to be perfect. I have to work out every single day, or I'm a failure, or I quit, or why bother? What's the use? All or nothing, black or white, perfectionistic, polarized. I'm either going to exercise all the time or I'm not. This leads to destruction and loss of motivation to your goals for healthy living, without a doubt. So, other examples not related to food necessarily or weight. If I yell at my kids at all, I'm a horrible parent. Welcome to the world of humanity where most parents at one time or another yell at their kids. Does not make them a terrible parent. But if you're engaging in this kind of thinking, it's almost like taking a hammer to your head and beating yourself up because you are just being cruel and vicious to yourself. And again, 99% of the time, if you're engaging in that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior, and when I say that kind of behavior, I mean beating up on yourself, it's you that's doing it at this point in time. Sure, it may have been your mom or your sister or your aunt or your coach or your teacher back in the day, but pretty much if we're doing this at our present age, we're the one holding that hammer and bonking ourselves in the head with it. Another example, if I give into junk food this morning, it's over. Doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So what are we going to do? We're going to catch it. Negative thought, old thinking, stinking thinking. Is it going to move me closer to my goals? Most certainly is not. So I'm going to call it what it is. A, it's negative thinking. B, it's all or nothing, perfectionist kind of thinking. So I have to change it. How can I alter that? What logic can I apply so my emotions and my logic balance out? All right. So give yourself a point if you engage in this all or nothing, black or white, perfectionistic kind of thinking. That's something we want to change. Here's another one I can guarantee you. We've all been in this thinking trap. It's called comparison. Take a breath. Think about the last time you compared yourself to somebody else. Mine was about 10 minutes ago. Well, it was a little over a couple hours ago, probably. I was at my doctor's office for my annual physical, and I, I have an issue with numbers on the scale, so I don't look at them. But I do know that I have gained weight because I in my mid 60s have gone up a clothing size. And so I choose not to let that bother me. And here's one of the tools that I use, right? I'm 64 years old, and I ask myself, when does it end? This comparing my size to other people's sizes, thinking comparing myself to women 40 years younger than me, or what, even women my same age. When does it end? And the answer is when I choose to let it go. And that is the same for each and every one of us. When do we stop comparing? When do we stop giving into the all or nothing thinking? When do we stop looking for the negative? When do we stop replaying those old tapes? As soon as we decide to. That is the bottom line. There's a tipping point. We say enough. Enough. So I may have those automatic thoughts like I did at the doctor's, wondering how many other women my age are in my same weight category, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I literally had to say to myself, stop, stop. When does it end? When I choose for it to end. I choose now. I'll give you another example of comparing myself. I have a very good friend, someone I love so, so, so dearly, and we've been friends for 30 years. And she lives in Texas, and I went there to visit her last weekend. And my friend always struggled with food noise and chronic hunger, and like many people. And she was morbidly obese. And for the last 2 years, both she and her husband have taken GLP-1s. And she's a rail. I mean, she's lost 100 pounds. And even to the point that when I posted a picture online, one of our mutual friends said, "Oh, look at her. She's skinnier than you." And I thought, okay, it's not just me that compares. Other people are comparing us. And so now, my friend who used to be much, much larger is definitely smaller than I am. And the thought is, so what? So what? I love her the same. She loves me the same. It's not an issue unless either of us makes it an issue. And I want you to think about that too. A lot of things aren't an issue until you choose to make them an issue. And comparison is one of the greatest ways that we allow ourselves or we choose to make it an issue. I have a history with anorexia. I could choose to let the situation, the comparison with my friend, kickstart a round of anorexia. Not worth it, because it doesn't matter. So, what are you going to do with comparison? Usually, we don't compare ourselves to people we think are doing worse than us. We compare ourselves to people we think are doing better than us, for sure. So we say, "Oh, she and I had weight loss surgery at the same time. When look at look how much more weight they've lost. It's just I just don't get it." Well, quit comparing yourself, because you don't know their journey before. You don't know their body mechanics. You don't know any of that stuff. Or we both have been taking a GLP-1 for the same amount of time. I've lost 30 pounds. You've lost 100. Why? Why? Because that's how your body's responded. So quit comparing. Put some logic on that negative thought that's holding you down, that's got you trapped. So the logic would be, we have different body chemistries. That medicine apparently is affecting her body differently than it is mine. Or take it outside the weight loss realm. God, I swear I studied twice as long for that exam as so and so did, and they still got a better grade. Quit comparing. Quit comparing. Is that doing you any good? Does it make you the happier person? Does it make you content with yourself? Does it put you in a place in your life where you want to be? Never. Never. So it's a choice. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to recognize it. I'm going to catch it. Ooh, I'm comparing. I'm going to call it what it is, comparing, and then I'm going to change it. I can't have any influence over how medication affects them, or how much studying they do, or what kind of a test taker they are. So I'm not going to do it. Automatic, I was going to say peace, but less discontent. Another example of this would be, I do 5 times as much for my parents as my sisters. And yet, gosh, you'd think they hung the moon when it comes to my parents. So I'm comparing myself with somebody else. And typically we only do that when we're going to come up short. That's a choice. I would recommend away from that. Next cognitive distortion that I think a lot of us fall prey to is applying the negative filter, or dismissing the positives. And I'm going to use that goal weight thing again. Oh my gosh, I lost 138 pounds, but my goal weight was to lose 145. I'm such a loser. So I'm applying this negativity filter over something remarkable and amazing. Another example. Gosh, I got my master's degree, but my siblings, they've got not only their master's degree, but they've got their doctorates. I can never live up in my family. So now I did comparing myself to the siblings, and I'm putting myself down. I'm putting on that negative filter that I just can't live up no matter what. Who's doing this to me? I am. Nobody else. I'm the one doing this to me. How about this one? I got a promotion at work, but I'm still not making as much as my sister. So we have a really positive that's moving you forward toward the goals you want to meet in your life. And then you come crashing down on it. Again, I imagine us with like a plastic hammer hitting ourselves in the head because it's not good enough. And how many of us complain about things not being good enough for our parents or whomever, our spouse or our partner? Well, here we are applying that same unhealthy, it's not good enough onto ourselves. Who's doing it to you? So, have you done that one? Dismiss the positive, focus on the negative. All right, here's another one, friends. I think that we can all comfortably say, been there, done that. We personalize something that may not be personal. For example, we may see events as consequences of something I did, but there are many, many possibilities. So maybe I was kind of harsh with you. I had this short tone because I was in a hurry and I was just got to bark out this answer to you. And your thought is, they're really mad at me. She didn't like me. My barking at you had nothing to do with you. I was late for my own meeting. I had 17 things on my own agenda. I'm crabby because my car wouldn't start, or I ran myself out of gas on the way to work, or whatever it happens to be. But in my head, it had no thing whatsoever to do with you. But you're doing the thing a lot of us do. Personalize it. Oh my gosh, what did I do to upset them? Oh my goodness, I think they're mad at me. Oh my gosh, maybe they'll never talk to me again. Don't take things personally, because what you're doing is you're creating a story that may or may not have anything to do with you. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say chances are it has nothing to do with you. Don't know if you're familiar with the book Four Agreements. We've talked about it on here before. And I'm going to say it's not my favorite book, but the message of the book is absolutely one of my favorites. And they have these principles, four of them. That's why, or four, what the heck do they call it? Agreements. The four agreements. And one of them is don't take things personally. And I think that's a brilliant awareness. So if you're having a conversation with somebody and they make a generalized statement, you automatically think, oh my God, they're talking about me. Oh my gosh, they're trying to tell me I've done that at some point in time. Oh my God. Who's doing this to you? You are. You are, with a distorted thought. Oh my gosh, this has got to be about me. This has just got to be, something I did somehow. Does it got to be? Maybe it's not. So use some of those questions on those worksheets that we talked about last week to work through this so you don't end up feeling heavy and unhappy and like you caused something, and whatever it is, it's your fault, because then you're going to go and you're going to try to make it up somewhere, and you're going to just make more messes of things because the person's probably going to go, what are they doing? Why are they kissing my butt? It's so annoying. Probably making it worse. So if you're taking things personally, catch it and say, and then we're going to call it out. We're going to name it. oh, I'm taking this really personally. Then I'm going to apply that logic. Could this be about something going on with that person? Gee, Wally, yeah, I think it could. Do you get the G Wally reference? What's that show? Leave It to Beaver? Yeah. Okay, so make sure that if you take something personally, you question yourself and say, are there other explanations for their tone, for their abruptness, for their seeming lack of time for me? Because everything's not about me. And yet I'm kind of taking it like it was. So call it out, call yourself out, catch it, and then work on this to change it. All right. Here's one you might not be familiar with doing, but I'm guessing you do it. And the reason I say that is because I catch people doing it in therapy all the time. And I catch myself doing it more than I'm comfortable with. And what I'm referring to, they call in the world of cognitive distortions mind reading. And when you're mind reading, you're deciding what people are thinking and feeling without having any evidence. So when you're at a support group and somebody's giving you the side eye and you interpret that and you make up your mind about what they're thinking. So first of all, you're personalizing. Well, maybe they're looking at you kind of sideways because they're questioning something in their mind. So it really doesn't have anything to do with you. They're looking through you, not at you. So the first thing you've done there is personalize it. Oh my God, they're looking at me. And then you decide, well, they're looking at me because they can't, they clearly haven't lost as much weight as I have. And so they're probably, they're just jealous. Mind reading, ding, 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 ding. You are deciding you know what that person's thinking. You're deciding you know how that person's feeling. And I got news for you, friend. You don't. And you never do. Regardless of how well you may know somebody, and you're thinking, oh, I know how they would respond in this situation. I know exactly what they would say because, this is how they're thinking and feeling in that situation. Well, you don't get to be the judge. You don't get to be the juror. You don't get to be the one. You're not a mind reader. So here's some examples. And I've heard this from a lot of patients. So assuming everybody at the restaurant is looking at you because you're the heaviest one in the room, or they're looking at you and they're really watching, what's that person? Is that broccoli or is that some kind of green jello? You think, oh, they're watching what I'm eating. They're watching how much food I'm eating. May or may not be true at all, but we don't know. And we don't get to be the ones to make that discernment. So maybe you go into the restaurant, you think everybody's gonna, think, "Ooh, she's the heaviest one in the party," or you decide what your parents are going to say when you set a boundary. It's like, okay, parents, listen. This food talk, this how much do I weigh? This do you really need to eat that? I'm setting a boundary with you. I can't tolerate that anymore. And you've decided because you're a mind reader. Now, granted, you probably know these people well and you might have a pretty good idea, but you also might be really shocked and surprised. But you make up your mind that they're going to say something snarky and you're going to, now you see, you've mind read, you're foreseeing this awful, god awful scenario play out and you're mind reading. You do not have the right to do that. You don't get to do that. All right. What about this one? Making negative predictions. In other words, you overestimate the likelihood that some action is going to have a negative outcome. So if I say, you know what? I'm going to ask my husband about leaving the kids just for a weekend. He can take it. He can do it. So I can go on a girls' trip. So I think here's what he's going to do. He's going to blow a gasket. He's going to say, how dare you? How dare you put me in a position to be doing that. So that's what you're doing. You're predicting something negative. He may, but he may surprise you and go, you know what? I think that's a great idea. You've been working so hard. I think that would be really, really good for you. Or let's say that you decide that you're going to ask your friends because you want to do social things with them as you're losing weight, but you don't want to go out to eat every single time. And so you want to ask them, do you mind if we do some things besides meet at a restaurant? And you impose a negative prediction. Oh, they're just going to say, this is what we've done. They're just going to they're just going to tell me, no, so sorry. We know you're special. We have this negative prediction of what's going to happen. We do not have the right to do that. So this is a tough one to call on ourselves because we're not always aware that we're doing it. And this is where it can really benefit us to have friends who are willing to say, sounds like you're trying to be a mind reader. Just call you out on it. So you can get defensive about it and say, no, I'm not. But at least maybe it'll get your attention. You're like, maybe I was predicting something negative here. All right, another one that I can assure you have done because I have done it. And I know that we all have because we are so human. And it's blaming, right? We're shifting or attributing personal blame or responsibility to somebody else or a group of other people. For example, you might say, oh my gosh, you're so distressed. And you're like, oh my God, it's my fault. My daughter, my 17-year-old daughter ran away from home. It's my fault. If I had been a better mom, she wouldn't have done that. So you're blaming yourself. In this case, hammer, 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 blow to the head, blow to the head, blow to the head. She's a 17-year-old girl. Is it your responsibility? Is it your fault that she ran away? No, that was her choice. Her choice to do so. Brightest idea in the world? Probably not. Irrational thinking leads to irrational behavior. So she was probably thinking irrationally and she responded irrationally. But what about you? What do you do? Do you do the same thing? If you respond irrationally, do you behave irrationally? Most likely. So automatically distributing or attributing, not distributing, automatically attributing blame. Most often we do it to somebody else. Sometimes we take the blame ourselves. However, it's more common to be like, well, if my spouse wouldn't have brought all that sugary food into the house, I wouldn't have regained that weight. So now I'm going to say it's his fault. I'm not going to look at the fact that I had personal responsibility about whether I put it in my mouth or not. I'm going to blame him. It's easier to blame him than look at those three fingers pointing back at me. All right, what about if you hadn't been so mean to me or so snarky or so sarcastic, I wouldn't have posted those things about you online. Ooh, so I posted some negative things about you online, but I'm going to blame you. I'll give you an example I heard on my trashy podcast the other day. And it's about weight loss too. So this woman had a friend. We'll call her Elizabeth. Elizabeth was going to go on a weight journey because Elizabeth had like 30, 40 pounds to lose. And Elizabeth's friend, we'll call her Lila, also had a little bit of weight to lose, but she wasn't interested. It's like, you go, Elizabeth, you do your thing, you lose your weight. I'm okay the way I'm at. I feel good about myself. I'm good. So Elizabeth, this is supposedly a true story they talked about on the podcast. Elizabeth starts sending Lila some texts about, oh, it'd be so great if we did this together. And I think it'd be so much fun and we could do this together. And again, Lila said, that's not where I'm at in my life right now. I'm perfectly okay. onward and forward. But Elizabeth wouldn't let it go. She eventually sent some photos of Lila that she had filtered or doctored or something and showed Lila how she would look 20 pounds from now. She's like, don't you want us to be that together? Don't you want us to? Well, this really, 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 really ticked Lila off. She's like, I'm at the end of my rope. I've asked her not to send these. I've told her I find it offensive. I told her I'm not interested in losing weight. So what Elizabeth did is she took some pictures of, no, what Lila did is she took some pictures of her friend Elizabeth, who had a crooked nose. You know where this is going, don't you? She had the pictures photoshopped and she put them online and sent them to her friend and said, gee, if you would be interested in having, cosmetic surgery, this is what you would look like. I think you'd look so much better. Retaliation, anyone? But then what did she do? She blamed Elizabeth. If you had left me alone when I told you I wasn't interested in losing weight, I wouldn't have done that. Well, she's blaming Elizabeth for having done something pretty darn rude herself. So she's going to have to figure out a lot of ways to apologize if things are ever going to straighten out between them. So, what ways have you blamed? How can you change that? Well, you can become aware. You know what? I just blamed. Or if you're on the phone, have your friends call you out, share with them. And they might say, did you just blame? So we have to become aware of something before we can change it. Love it. All right, here's another one that the majority of us fall into. We use the word must or should or ought. And this is sometimes referred to as masturbating or shoulding on ourselves. Because when we use words like you must or I should, then you're really kind of coming down on yourself and you may be setting up something that is so rigid and unattainable that all there is left is failure. So, for example, if you express wishes or preferences as rigid demands, so you say to yourself, you must comply with my new eating behaviors. You need to keep all of those tempting foods out of my house. But do they need to? Not necessarily. Would it be more helpful if they would? Oh, absolutely. But they're not obligated to do any of that because of a decision that you made. So you don't have the right to say you should, you must, you ought to, you need to. That's a demand. That's a demand I am now making on you. And I don't have the right to demand that kind of thing from you. I can say I'd really appreciate it. That'd be great. But I am not going to tell somebody what they must do or should do or ought to do in my house. So you might say to your sibling, you should, you should be losing weight too. You should be working to try to get a promotion. You really need to. Oh, I'll tell you a situation where I got so enraged at a friend because I took it very personally. And I don't believe I retaliated. However, I changed my mind on that. I think I retaliated, but in a more passive aggressive way. So here's what my friend said to me, and this was years ago. And I have short hair, and I've always worn my hair short. And apparently, she doesn't like my hair short. I guess when I knew her, I wore it long. We were in college together. So she's always saying something about my hair when I see her. She lives in Florida. I live in Georgia. So every once in a while, we'll get together. And She would very often say things to me like, "Well, you should consider this cut, or you ought to ask your therapist, your hair therapist, stylist about this kind of thing." And this last time, she said, "Well, you should really have my hair cutter." She lives in Florida. "You should come down just to at least get a clean cut." And I was like, how freaking rude. I was so offended. So I took it personally. That's a me thing because I know she wasn't trying to be hurtful. I think she lacked some tact there, but I don't think she was trying to hurt me. I think she was trying to give me ideas because she most certainly, by any standards, she was a higher, and I don't mean better person. She was classier than I am. I'm kind of a blue jeans and t-shirt kind of gal. She's going to dress up and make her hair all pretty and do the makeup. And, you know, I cut my hair and I'm off to go in 5 minutes. So I'm not a fancy schmancy girl. And I think she was just trying to help me, as they say today, elevate myself. I don't want to elevate. This is who I am. Although sometimes I compare. For example, yesterday, see, this is what we're doing. We're calling ourselves out. And again, I want to remind you, I said this last week, it's not about not doing these things ever. It's about making a decision what you're going to do when you're aware of it. Because automatic negative thoughts, we talked about that cow path. You are going to fall into those traps, into that worn cow path very easily. So it's not, oh my gosh, I'm having these negative thoughts. I'm in these thinking traps. That's not the problem. The problem is if you do nothing about it once you recognize you're there. That's why we have to recognize it, make a decision about it, and then change it, hopefully. So, yesterday, we were at a ball tournament for one of the grandkids, and this team is so great. I love this team because not only do they have amazing parents that show up, but we have an amazing contingent of grandparents. And so we've all gotten to be, chummy, at least at the games. And last year, the end of the season party was at my house. I don't have a kid on the team. I have a grandkid on the team. So the parents, the kids, the grandparents, we all came and had a great time. But it's a great group of people. And there's one of the grandmothers always looks like $1,000,000. I'm not kidding you. I just look at her and I'm like, mm. So I said to her yesterday, I just called myself out on it and I laughed at myself. I said, you always look so nice and you just really are so put together well and you're just beautiful. It was a genuine compliment. I said to Kelsey one day, who's my daughter, I said, you know, I wish I was that kind of grandma, kind of put together and looking good and, wear some cute clothes to the game. And my daughter looked at me and she said, no, you don't. And the truth is, no, I don't. I'm going to have my jogger pants on and my t-shirt and my baseball cap and my sunglasses because that is who I am. But I compared a little bit, but I didn't let myself go. She's all classy and I'm just a bum and she looks so pretty and I look like such a little, farm girl and uh-uh. I laughed at myself and I said, this is who I am. And I have to show up as who I am. I'm not fancy grandma. You look adorable. You always dress like that. So I know that's who you are. You're not trying to impress anybody, but this is who I am. So acceptance. I didn't fall into the trap. I said, I'm not going to be trapped in that. I don't need to should on myself and say, I should look like this at the game. I am who I am. She is who she is. And it's all good. All right. Now I'm only going to do a few more because we are closing in on running out of time here. And I want to talk a little bit more about the how do we catch this and change it? All right, here's one that I really hadn't heard of before, and it's called the change fallacy. And this kind of thinking trap is based on assuming that things should always change in a way that's going to make me happy or suit my needs. And I think if you've listened to me long enough, you know that when I first got married, this is embarrassing. In my mind, I really thought it was my husband's job to make me happy. That's naive. That is fairy tale like. And I had to learn that it's my job to make me happy. My husband wants to come along on the ride, more power to him and me. But it's not his job to make me happy. And part of that was this change fallacy that he's just going to have to change all of his ways to make me happy. Here's some of the things that I thought he needed to change. Well, things you learn about people after you're married that you don't know before you marry them, right? And I don't know why this took me by such surprise. He came from a family of 5 boys and 1 girl. They liked sports. I came from a family of 5 girls and 1 boy. And these are just the siblings. I didn't watch sports. I didn't participate in sports. I knew nothing about sports. So it came as this ginormous surprise to me that on the weekends, my husband, who grew up in a college town, who loved his college team, would want to watch sports all day on the weekends, every weekend, lying on the couch. And that came as such a shock to me. And I thought, well, that's not how you live life. You don't live life lying on a couch all weekend. So, of course, I thought that he needed to change to my way of living to make me happy. Now, when we had 3 kids, there was not enough time for him to land. So we came to an arrangement that worked for both of us. It was a win-win. He watched his favorite teams. He grew up a Packer fan. He was a lifelong, at the time, Boston Celtics fan. And we both went to Iowa State, and he went to all the sports, and I went to none of them. So whenever his favorite teams were on, it was like, yeah, go watch, have fun, enjoy, stomp and scream and, scare the neighbors with how loud you get. But how about we don't spend all weekend when we got 3 kids who are a little more energized than sitting on the couch all day? So we had to do that compromise thing. But I assumed I had this change fallacy. He'll change all of his ways just to make me happy. Well, that was childish thinking. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. Some people, when it comes to the weight, are like, well, you know what? I'm on this weight journey, and I told my partner I expect them to exercise with me. And you know what? He says he's going to do whatever it takes. So I guess if he wants me to do it, because when he does it with me, I'm more motivated. So I guess he's just going to have to do it with me. I'm going to assume that he's going to change his non-exercising ways because it'll make me happy. Not fair, not valid, unless it's something the partner wants to do. Or what about with siblings? You know, if my brother doesn't like that I'm not going to help him with our parents as much, then he's just going to have to suck it up and accept it. I'm just not going to do it. So he's going to have to change, because isn't it everybody's job to make me happy? And how about this? And a lot of people are on this. It's my year to shine. This is the year of me. Fine. As long as you don't have this change fallacy that the whole world is going to get behind you and do what they need to do to change so you can have your year of shining. So this change fallacy. So have you engaged in that? So all of these things are traps. I'm going to do one more, because this one is one that trips us up in relationships, probably more than anything else. And it's one of the biggest changes in my life that has led to a change in my life, a big one. Seeing a situation from only your perspective. And it's like looking in one window of a room. You only see your view. When I learned that I had to attempt to look at things from, say, my husband's perspective, it was shocking. And some ways that I see people doing this in the weight loss community are being really ticked off that people don't understand that obesity is a disease and making generalizations about them. And they should be ticked off about that. However, 5 minutes later, they're judging up a storm and not having any compassion for the people with gambling problem or the spending problem or the drinking problem. We have to be willing to see things through other people's perspectives. All right, how do we change this? How do we let go of these negative thought patterns? Well, we catch it. I'm aware. I see that I'm doing this. You notice it. And then you say, is this going to move me closer to my goal or further from it? Then I check it. I question it. Is this a realistic way of thinking? Are there other possibilities for this? Is there evidence of this? Do I need to apply some logic, or is there too much emotion weighing on me? Is this way of thinking helpful to me? Does it fit with my values, with my goals? And what category does it fall into? Is this all or nothing thinking? Is it comparison? Is it mind reading? So first, I catch it, then I check it. I ask the questions, and then I change it. What would be a more realistic thought? What would be a more logical thought? What would be a more helpful way for me to think about this? So that's the way you do it. You catch it, awareness, you check it, you question it, you use those cognitive behavioral sheets that I sent out last week or noted in the show notes, which I will put some more in there today, same ones and some different ones, because I want you to be able to identify it as what it is. And I'll give you these lists of different kinds of thinking traps. And then you make an effort to change it. So here's what I want you to do. Takeaway message, takeaway task. When you identify these distortions, you can achieve a more accurate and balanced perspective. That's what we want, balance in our lives. And then we're going to improve our outcomes, because more rational thinking leads to more rational behavior. Healthy, positive thinking leads to healthy, positive behavior. So maybe work on one or two this week. Maybe start with all or nothing thinking, because a lot of people who are on the weight loss journey fall into that all or nothing. I blew it, it's over. I didn't exercise, never going back to the gym. So maybe pick that. Or maybe pick the one about applying a negativity filter and dismissing the positive. You lost weight, but oh my gosh, I didn't lose enough. Get over it. Focus on the positive. Yay, look what I did this week. How can I keep that going? Or maybe you can work on a comparison thing. So just pick one or two and share it with somebody else, one a day. Share it with somebody in your support group or on your online group, and encourage other people to learn these skills. Your children, teach them about these things and how to change that. I'm telling you, if we can get people to overcome these negative thought patterns, things can change a lot for the positive, not only in your weight loss journey, but every area of your life. So again, today's topic is about bariatrics, but it also goes beyond bariatrics. So please encourage others in your life to listen to this, because I promise you, it pertains to them too. All right. So as always, it's your life, it's your health, makes it your responsibility. When? Today and every day. All right. Thanks for spending your time with me, my friends. I am off to do another BariAftercare video tonight. I am going to be meeting with a bariatric member of the BariAftercare community, and we are going to make our second version of healthy macaroni and cheese and judge it and give you the recipe as well. So be looking for that online. If you're not a part of the full BariAftercare program, go to www.bariaftercare.com and sign up. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.